I'm Cameron Oskvig. I'm the director of the Federal Facilities Council, and I'm going to do a little introduction about the Federal Facilities Council, the National Academies Board on Infrastructure, and then some about the FFC's interest in federal facilities asset management. The Federal Facilities Council is a cooperative association of federal agencies whose mission is to identify and advance technologies, process, and management practices to improve management, operations, and evaluations of federal facilities throughout their life cycle. It was established in 1953, and it includes over 20 federal agencies with a diverse set of missions and types of assets and asset classes. The FFC is chaired by a former Assistant Secretary, Jim Rispoli of the DOE, and is vice chaired by George Lee from the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. It has 5 standing subcommittees focused in areas of design and construction, operations and maintenance, real property and transactional real estate, cyber and physical security, and workforce and organizational performance. One of the things to note about the Federal Facilities Council is directed by our sponsor agencies. They identify the topics that they want the National Academies staff and the sponsor organizations to undertake in a calendar year. The 2020 topics that were selected pre-COVID were practices for facility condition assessments, the varying different practices and their pros and cons, measuring performance versus measuring condition. In addition, other topics was digitization and technology adoption in facilities planning and management. A communications topic around how do we best message the risk of lack of investment in our facilities and actions that can be taken to bring down to improve sustainability and bring down life cycle costs. And lastly, a comparison of facilities cost data, both commercially available and those created within the agencies across the federal government. Other topics that the FFC has undertaken this year, obviously COVID-19 and facilities during and after. So how do we bring people into our facilities? And then what do we think the facilities are going to look like following this pandemic? We do have, it's been a webinar series that we've been running. We have another one coming up around HVAC and ventilation. The supply chain for our skilled facilities workforce, how are agencies currently getting and then envisioning future skilled facilities workforce? How do they obtain them? How are they going to train them? Technology adoption and construction of facility management world, cataloging of agency real property authorities, communicating America's infrastructure investments for better building, energy master planning for resilient public communities, which is actually ongoing right now in a separate forum, managing cybersecurity of operational technology, managing critical infrastructure risks, and O&M planning for scientific facilities and goals. The FFC is organized under the Board on Infrastructure and Constructed Environment at the National Academies, which advises the government and private sector organizations and the general public on questions of technology, science, and public policy, and the relationship between the constructed and natural environment. The BICE vision is to promote research and strategic thinking that inspire society and foster built environments that enhance life quality and sustainable communities. And its members include former Chief of the Army Corps of Engineers, Tom Bostic, Stephen Ayers, former Architect of the Capitol, Dorothy Robine, former GSA Public Building Commissioner, and Jim Rispoli formerly with DOE, as well as other academics and professionals in the built environment world. The communities that the BICE engages with include the federal community, the GAO, the CBO, professional societies such as AIA, American Society of Civil Engineers, and IFMA, professionals including architects, civil engineers, asset and facility managers, capital planners, building system engineers, codes and standards making bodies, and congressional committees and staff. Recent studies from the National Academies Board on Infrastructure include the built environment, which looked at creating a research agenda for understanding better about microbiology and how we operate and build our buildings. assessing the capital infrastructure needs of the National Institute of Health, which evaluated the infrastructure backlog at the National Institutes of Health and prioritized investments in their main campus in Bethesda, Maryland. As a result of that study, $550 million of extra appropriations has been identified towards NIH in the last several years. And then facility staffing requirements for the Veterans Health Administration, which supported their development of a facility staffing strategy for their VA campuses, for their clinics and all their facilities. Several ongoing studies, one of which you're going to hear about from following speakers, are a strategy for a business case renewal of federal facilities, which is a federal facilities sponsored study, review of project management at DOE's Environmental Management Program, which came out of an NDAA bill. If you follow GAO reports, they've issued many reports over the last several years regarding DOE EM, and the review of methods for setting building and equipment performance standards. It's a peer review of analytical models that are employed by the DOE in setting their standards regulations. Some other past consensus studies are in areas of green building, sustainable critical infrastructure, and high performance buildings. Other impact areas that we have are in infrastructure strategies and practices, budget preparation and policy making, performance and design standards, setting research agendas, workforce, and operations and design decisions on how they affect occupants, users, economics, and in the environment. We've looked at natural and technological hazard impacts, such as extreme winds, fire and earthquake, and mitigation and physical security. And the BICE has worked with the Federal Facilities Council, and Mike and Jack are going to talk about this series of reports later, but we've had a long-standing body of work over 30 years on looking at asset management practices within the federal government. So I want to talk a little bit about the federal facilities asset management in general, and where the FFC has been looking at activity within it. And to start with, that this is a journey. And the benefits, as I showed previously, it's a 30-year journey in FFC and Academies reports. The Transportation Research Board runs a continual research program in transportation system asset management. Other areas in energy, water, telecommunications, and buried infrastructure also have issued reports within the National Academies which address some aspects of asset management. The benefits for enhancing asset management practices can be realized at any time in the life cycle. And unlike many procedures in engineering, construction, and project delivery, asset management does not have a checked, we've done it and you can move on. Rather, it's a continuous process. And the objectives vary by agency and vary over time within an agency. Asset management implementation process recognizes that agencies vary greatly in their need for asset management and their levels of process and technology complexity. Organizations' current capabilities and asset management maturity can be assessed given considerations for people, systems, and process, and specific topics include policy goals and objectives, asset management practices, planning, programming, and project delivery, data management, information systems, transparency and results, and workforce capacity and development. The business case for improved asset management is we can't afford not to do it. Financial basis should be demonstrated in savings across the life cycle, in managed and lessened user disruptions, in optimization of resources, and improved sustainability and improved resilience. The FFC routinely talks about how do we better communicate through our agencies and throughout the stovepipes that exist within those agencies. Implementation of an asset management system considers the roles, needs, and expectations of the stakeholders and how to communicate effectively. Simple guides for effective communication skills focus on simple and connected building blocks like audience identification, message design, message delivery, and effective use of data to drive decisions or market research. Unique factors that will shape our communications include infrastructure conditions, funding levels, authorities related to real property, and political considerations. In looking at a simplified asset management implementation framework, which I showed here, there are several steps. You know, it's what do we have? What do we need to know about what we have and its condition? What's its performance? Investment analysis that provides a defensible basis for operational decisions, communicating those results, and since it's a management system, a process improvement. The following slides document areas that the Federal Facilities Council has explored in each of these areas. In asset management or asset inventory, we've looked at the data management of the FRPP, level of details that are required in your asset inventory, the taxonomies used, and how to measure even square footages. You know, that varies across the federal government. Location, as Keith described, horizontal and both vertical, are still outstanding questions. As-built, BIM, and electronic maintenance manuals, processes for moving those between owners and builders and the operators, plant replacement value and current replacement value. Areas the Federal Facilities Council has involved itself in condition. Actually, 3 of those are in our agendas for 2020, which is methodologies for condition assessments, the pros and cons of those different methodologies, whether they're surveyed, engineered, or other methods for establishing condition, cost estimation for those for deficiencies found in those conditions, and the operations and maintenance required. How do you model that? How do you plan for that? In performance, looking at criticality of the facilities, criticality of systems, mission dependency indexes, and the application of those. Actual costs, how do you know, there was talk about using the budget process to get the actual cost on our facilities, getting a handle on what facilities actually cost the organization. Functionality index, is the facility functioning the way it's intended? Is it providing the need that the organization needs to meet its obligations? Utilization, how is utilization measured? Office utilization is one measurement, but how about other asset classes? Mission impact, and this really boils down to, you know, a basic question of asset management. How does the asset, in this case facility, impact the mission? What is the investment in the asset? How does it affect the mission outcome? Health and safety, user and occupant impact, which NASA has done some interesting work in productivity and health, as well as COVID is a great example of providing a healthy environment to bring people back. Other risks like climate and cyber man-made, enterprise management, and energy management. And then taking investment analysis, looking at maintenance strategies, optimal investment points for repair and renewal, and goals for organizations tied to capital planning. The prioritization methodologies of capital projects. This is the rack and stack. How do you rack and stack projects to meet in the most effective way to meet organizational goals? Communication of results using sustainment management models like Builder, degradation curves, and budget dependent scenarios where if I get X amount of money and I target it to certain assets, what is the outcome of that? What is the outcome to the mission? What are the outcomes in the overall asset condition? And then, you know, in process improvement, evaluating and expanding, you know, do we evaluate or enhance our inventory? Do we add more detail to that? How do we calibrate our asset models? We're going to use them with new data, with better data, developing new asset models if needed, adding new asset classes in that need to be part of our asset programming, including other agency programs, operational programs, not just the facilities program, developing, enhancing data management, mapping, real-time performance, improving our asset management plan, the document itself, the process, adding objective measures based on stakeholder feedback, and evaluating other agency-supported software. DHS talked about the vast number of systems that they've gotten, all the information that's being collected, and using machine learning and other analytical tools to evaluate what can be valuable in the asset management process, in the management of facilities, the real property business processes, which the FRPC is working on, and in technology adoption. Overall, the benefits for improving asset management process are real and measurable and are increasingly recognized by both public and private infrastructure organizations. There's financial savings, ability to manage risk, and enhanced decision support. Ultimately, maturing asset management of federal facilities provides defensible basis for operational decisions, enhancing their ability to compete for resources and funds. Further, those responsible for assets will be able to communicate to executives, budget office, and planning staff the levels of risk and the costs that an agency may be accepting through legacy design and maintenance practices.